The Corpus Christi sun was barely peeking over the horizon as I laced up my running shoes. Another day, another jog along Ocean Drive Park. I'm Erica Gray, and at 35, I've made a name for myself in the acting world. But here, in the quiet morning hours, I'm just another face in the crowd. As I rounded the first bend, I spotted her again. Tall, brunette, with an air of quiet determination. For 3 months now, we'd been passing each other on this very stretch. Always a nod, sometimes a smile, but never a word. There was something about her that made my heart skip a beat every time. I picked up my pace, feeling the cool breeze off the Gulf of Mexico tousle my blonde hair. My agent would have a fit if he knew I was risking my perfectly styled image out here. But this was my time. My escape from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. As I approached the halfway point of my run, the sky suddenly darkened. Within seconds, fat raindrops began pelting down, quickly soaking through my thin running gear. "Shit," I muttered, looking around for shelter. That's when I saw her again, the mysterious brunette, making a beeline for a nearby gazebo. Without thinking, I sprinted after her, arriving just as the heavens truly opened up. We stood there, both slightly out of breath, watching the deluge. I could feel her eyes on me, and when I turned, I was struck by the intensity of her green gaze. "Looks like we had the same idea," she said, her voice low and warm. I laughed, running a hand through my damp hair. "Great minds think alike, I guess." "I'm Sarah," she offered, extending a hand. "Sarah Carter." "Erica Gray," I replied, taking her hand. The touch sent a jolt through me that had nothing to do with the storm outside. We fell into easy conversation, discovering we'd both been admiring each other from afar during our morning runs. Sarah, it turned out, was an indie film director working on her latest project. "I've been looking for the right lead actress," she mused, her eyes scanning my face in a way that made me feel both exposed and exhilarated. "Someone who can portray complex emotions without saying a word." The rain continued to pour, but I barely noticed. We talked about our careers, our dreams, our frustrations with an industry that often valued appearance over substance. As Sarah spoke passionately about her vision for authentic storytelling, I found myself drawn in, captivated by her words and the fire in her eyes. Time seemed to stand still in that little gazebo. The world outside faded away, leaving just the two of us, sharing secrets and stolen glances. When our fingers brushed as we both reached to push back a stray strand of Sarah's hair, the electricity between us was undeniable. As the rain finally began to let up, Sarah turned to me with a smile that made my knees weak. "You know, Erica, I think you might be perfect for my new film. Would you be interested in auditioning?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'd love to." We exchanged numbers, promising to set up a meeting. As we prepared to head our separate ways, Sarah hesitated, then leaned in close. Her lips brushed my cheek, sending shivers down my spine. "I'm looking forward to seeing you again," she whispered, before jogging off into the misty morning. I stood there, watching her disappear into the distance, my heart racing. Something told me that this chance encounter was going to change everything. Little did I know just how right I was. A week after our rain-soaked encounter, I found myself standing outside a nondescript building in downtown Corpus Christi. My hand hovered over the buzzer, butterflies dancing in my stomach. This wasn't my first audition, but something about it felt different, more personal, more important. I took a deep breath and pressed the button. Sarah's voice crackled through the intercom, sending a shiver down my spine. "Come on up, Erica." The elevator ride to the 5th floor felt like an eternity. When the doors finally opened, Sarah was there, looking breathtaking in a simple black dress. Her smile lit up the room, and I felt my nerves melting away. "Welcome to my humble abode," she said, gesturing around the spacious loft that served as both her home and studio. "Ready to bring my vision to life?" For the next few hours, we dove into the script. Sarah's film was a raw, honest exploration of forbidden love, and as we read through scenes together, I found myself getting lost in the words, in the character. In Sarah's intense green eyes as she watched me perform. "That was incredible," Sarah breathed after a particularly emotional scene. She was standing so close I could smell her perfume, a heady mix of jasmine, and something uniquely her. "You have this ability to convey so much with just a look. It's exactly what I've been searching for." I felt my cheeks flush at her praise. "It's easy when the material is this good." "Your writing is beautiful, Sarah." She reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch sent electricity coursing through me. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me, but then her phone rang, shattering the moment. Sarah's expression darkened as she listened to the caller. When she hung up, she let out a frustrated sigh. The studio executives are pushing for a male lead opposite you. They think it'll be more marketable. I felt a pang of disappointment. But that's not the story you want to tell, is it? She shook her head, running a hand through her dark hair. No, it's not. But without their backing, I'm not sure I can make this film happen. I reached out, taking her hand in mine. We'll figure it out. Your vision is too important to compromise. Sarah squeezed my hand, her smile returning. You're right. Thank you, Erica. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a rhythm. Mornings were spent jogging side by side in Ocean Drive Park, no longer just passing strangers. Afternoons were dedicated to rehearsals and script revisions. And evenings. Evenings were for quiet conversations over wine, stolen glances, and an ever-growing tension that neither of us dared to address. One night, as we sat on Sarah's balcony watching the sunset over the Gulf, she turned to me with a mischievous glint in her eye. You know, I've been thinking about that rain-soaked morning when we first really met. How different things might have been if the weather had been clear. I laughed, taking a sip of my wine. Oh? And how's that? Well, for one, I might not have had the courage to talk to you, she admitted. Something about being trapped in that gazebo made it feel safe, like we were in our own little world. I felt my heart rate quicken. And now? Do you feel safe with me? Sarah's gaze dropped to my lips, then back to my eyes. I feel a lot of things with you, Erica. Safe is definitely one of them. The air between us crackled with electricity. I found myself leaning in, drawn by an invisible force. Sarah met me halfway, her lips soft and warm against mine. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened, years of unspoken longing pouring out in a single moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Sarah rested her forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you, she whispered. Me too, I admitted, running my fingers through her hair. The sound of Sarah's phone ringing inside broke the spell. She groaned, reluctantly pulling away. That'll be the studio again. They've been pushing hard for that male lead. I watched as she went inside to take the call, my mind racing. I knew the film industry, knew how hard it was to get funding for projects that didn't fit the typical mold. As much as I wanted to be with Sarah, to tell our story, I also knew the reality of the business. When Sarah returned, her expression was grim. They're threatening to pull funding if I don't agree to their casting choices. I don't know what to do, Erica. This film means everything to me, but I don't want to compromise its integrity. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to suggest. What if? What if we give them what they want, but on our terms? Sarah raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? What if I pretended to be engaged to a male actor? It would generate publicity, maybe even secure more funding. But behind the scenes, we could tell the story we want to tell. The look on Sarah's face was a mix of hope and hesitation. Erica, I can't ask you to do that. It's not fair to you. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. You're not asking. I'm offering. This story deserves to be told, Sarah. And if this is what it takes to make it happen, I'm willing to do it. Sarah pulled me into a fierce hug, her voice muffled against my shoulder. You're incredible, you know that? As I held her close, I tried to ignore the nagging voice in the back of my mind warning me about the potential consequences of this plan. But looking into Sarah's eyes, seeing the passion and determination there, I knew it was worth the risk. Little did I know just how much that decision would test us both in the days to come. The next morning, I woke to the buzzing of my phone. My agent, Tom, was calling. I groaned, rubbing the sleep from my eyes as I answered. Erica, darling, I've got fantastic news, Tom's voice boomed through the speaker. Remember James Mitchell, the heartthrob from that superhero franchise? Well, he's between projects and looking for something edgy. I may have mentioned Sarah's film, and he's interested in meeting you both. My stomach churned. This was happening faster than I'd anticipated. That's great, Tom. When? This afternoon, sweetheart. I'll text you the details. Oh, and wear something sexy. We want to get those romance rumors swirling. I ended the call, my mind racing. How was I going to tell Sarah? As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from her. Morning, beautiful. Breakfast at our usual spot? An hour later, I was sitting across from Sarah at a quiet cafe, the words stuck in my throat. She must have sensed my unease because she reached across the table, taking my hand. "What's wrong, Erica?" I took a deep breath and spilled everything. Tom's call, James Mitchell's interest, the impending meeting. Sarah's expression tightened as I spoke, her grip on my hand growing firmer. "It's happening so fast," she murmured. "Are you sure about this, Erica? We can find another way." I squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I'm sure. This is our best shot at making your film the way it deserves to be made. Besides," I added with a wink, "I'm a pretty good actress. I think I can handle pretending to be engaged to some Hollywood hunk." Sarah's laugh was tinged with sadness. "Just don't forget it's pretend, okay?" The meeting with James went better than I could have hoped. He was charming, professional, and genuinely excited about the project. As we discussed the script, I could see Sarah warming to him, her initial reservations fading. It was when Tom brought up the idea of a fake engagement that things got complicated. "Think about it," he gushed. "The publicity would be incredible. 2 of Hollywood's hottest stars falling in love on set? The media will eat it up." I glanced at Sarah, trying to gauge her reaction. Her face was a mask of professional interest, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. James, to his credit, seemed hesitant. "I don't know, Tom, isn't that a bit dishonest?" I jumped in, forcing a bright smile. "It's just good publicity, right? And it'll help secure funding for Sarah's vision. I'm game if you are, James." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'm in. But let's keep it classy, okay? No over-the-top PDAs or anything." As Tom excitedly began plotting our love story, I caught Sarah's eye across the room. The pain I saw there made my heart clench. Over the next few weeks, James and I were everywhere. Red carpet events, romantic dinners, even candid shots of us jogging together. Each photo op, each fawning interview, felt like a betrayal. The worst part was seeing Sarah's reaction. She tried to hide it, but I could see how much it hurt her. Our morning runs became less frequent, our evening script sessions more businesslike. One night, after a particularly grueling day of interviews, I showed up at Sarah's loft unannounced. She opened the door, surprise evident on her face. "Erica? What are you doing here? I thought you had a date with James tonight." I pushed past her into the apartment, my frustration bubbling over. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit there and pretend for one more minute when all I want is to be here with you." Sarah's expression softened. She closed the door and turned to me, her green eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Erica, I didn't let her finish. In 2 strides, I crossed the room and pulled her into a fierce kiss. She responded immediately, her hands tangling in my hair as she pressed me against the wall. When we finally came up for air, both panting, Sarah rested her forehead against mine. "We shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, even as her hands roamed my back. "Why not?" I challenged. "This is real, Sarah. What's out there with James, that's the lie." She pulled back slightly, cupping my face in her hands. "But your career, the film..." I silenced her with another kiss, softer this time. "We'll figure it out, together." What followed was a night of passion, tender touches, and whispered promises. As we lay tangled in Sarah's sheets, the first light of dawn peeking through the curtains, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in weeks. But reality has a way of intruding, even in the most perfect moments. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from the studio. They wanted to meet to discuss the progress of the film and our blossoming romance. As Sarah read the message aloud, her voice tight with worry, I felt a knot form in my stomach. We were in deep now, and I had no idea how we were going to navigate the choppy waters ahead. "We should get ready," Sarah said, reluctantly disentangling herself from me. "We can't be late for this meeting." I caught her wrist as she started to move away. "Hey," I said softly, waiting until she met my eyes. "No matter what happens in that meeting, or with this whole charade, know that this, us, is what's real. Okay?" Sarah's smile was bittersweet as she leaned down to kiss me one more time. "Okay." As we got dressed and prepared to face the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that our carefully constructed plan was about to unravel. But looking at Sarah, seeing the determination in her eyes as she prepared to fight for her vision, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. Little did I know just how soon our resolve would be tested, or how high the stakes would become. The studio meeting was a whirlwind of fake smiles and carefully crafted lies. James played his part perfectly, his arm draped casually over my shoulders as we regaled the executives with tales of our burgeoning romance. I could feel Sarah's eyes on us the entire time, her gaze burning into my skin. As we left the meeting, flush with the promise of increased funding and media attention, Sarah pulled me aside. "We need to talk," she whispered, her voice tight. "My place tonight." The hours crawled by as I waited for our rendezvous. When I finally arrived at Sarah's loft, the tension was palpable. She paced the living room, running her hands through her hair. "This is getting out of hand, Erica," she said, her voice cracking. "The way they look at you two, the way they talk about your chemistry, it's killing me." I reached for her, but she stepped back. "Sarah, it's not real. You know that." "Do I?" she challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn convincing." Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sarah froze, her eyes wide. "Were you followed?" I shook my head, my heart racing. Sarah moved to the door, peering through the peephole. Her sharp intake of breath told me all I needed to know. "It's James," she hissed. Panic flooded my system. "What's he doing here?" Sarah's face was a mask of confusion and hurt. "I don't know, but you need to hide, now." I ducked into Sarah's bedroom just as she opened the door. From my hiding spot, I could hear James's voice, low and urgent. "Sarah, I'm sorry to barge in like this, but we need to talk about Erica." My blood ran cold. Had he figured it out? Was our carefully constructed charade about to come crashing down? I pressed my ear to the door, straining to hear their conversation. "What about Erica?" Sarah's voice was carefully neutral. I think I'm falling for her, for real." The silence that followed was deafening. I could picture Sarah's face, the pain and shock that must be etched across her features. "James," she finally said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "You do realize this engagement is just for show, right? It's not real." "I know that's how it started," he replied, "but spending time with her, getting to know her. Sarah, she's incredible, and I think she might feel the same way." I felt sick to my stomach. This was never part of the plan. James wasn't supposed to develop real feelings. And now, trapped in Sarah's bedroom, I couldn't even defend myself or our relationship. "James." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "I think you're getting caught up in the fantasy. Erica is a wonderful actress, and she's playing her part well. But that's all it is, a part." There was a long pause before James spoke again. "Maybe you're right. I needed to talk to someone about it. Thanks for listening, Sarah." I heard the door close, followed by Sarah's footsteps approaching the bedroom. When she opened the door, her face was a storm of emotions. "Erica," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are we doing?" I reached for her, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We're telling your story," I murmured into her hair. "We're making your vision a reality." Sarah pulled back, her green eyes searching mine. "At what cost? Your reputation? Our sanity?" I cupped her face in my hands. "It's worth it. You're worth it." Our lips met in a desperate kiss, months of pent-up emotion pouring out. As we fell onto the bed, clothes being hastily discarded, I tried to push away the nagging doubts in the back of my mind. The next morning, we arrived on set early. The air was charged with an electric energy as the crew bustled about, preparing for the day's shoot. It was a pivotal scene, the first kiss between my character and James's. As we took our places, I could feel Sarah's eyes on me from behind the camera. Her gaze was intense, a mix of professional focus and personal anguish. "Action!" she called, her voice steady despite the turmoil I knew she must be feeling. James and I moved through the scene, our characters dancing around their attraction before finally giving in to a passionate kiss. As our lips met, I heard a sharp intake of breath from behind the camera. "Cut!" Sarah's voice rang out, sharper than usual. "That was good. Let's take 5 and then go again." As the crew dispersed, I caught Sarah's eye. The pain I saw there made my heart clench. This was tearing her apart, watching the woman she loved kiss someone else, even if it was just for the camera. I started to move towards her, but James caught my arm. "Erica, can we talk?" Trapped between the two of them, I felt my carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. "James, But before I could finish, a commotion erupted at the edge of the set. A man with a camera was being wrestled to the ground by security. Paparazzi, someone shouted. In the chaos that followed, I lost sight of both Sarah and James. As the set was locked down and the intruder was escorted out, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. Later that night, as I scrolled through my phone, my heart stopped. There, plastered across every gossip site, was a grainy photo of Sarah and me in what appeared to be an intimate embrace. The headlines screamed speculation and scandal. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Emergency meeting. Studio. Now. As I rushed to get dressed, my mind raced with the implications. Our secret was out. The carefully crafted lie we'd been living was about to come crashing down around us. I dialed Sarah's number, my hands shaking. When she answered, her voice was thick with emotion. "I've seen it," she said before I could speak. "Erica, what are we going to do?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "We're going to face this head-on, together." As I headed out into the night, toward a confrontation that could potentially end both our careers, I clung to one thought: no matter what happened next, the love Sarah and I shared was real, and that was worth fighting for. The studio lobby was eerily quiet as I stepped off the elevator. It was well past midnight, but the lights blazed as if it were midday. Sarah was already there, pacing nervously. When she saw me, her face crumpled with relief and fear. "Erica," she breathed, rushing towards me. We embraced briefly, drawing strength from each other before the storm hit. The conference room doors swung open, revealing a grim-faced Tom and a group of stern-looking executives. "Ladies," Tom said, his usual jovial tone replaced by something colder. "Please, come in." As we took our seats, I couldn't help but notice James's absence. My stomach churned with anxiety. "I assume you've both seen the photo," the studio head, Mr. Thompson, began without preamble. He slid a tablet across the table, the offending image glaring up at us. It was worse than I remembered. The graininess of the shot did nothing to disguise the intimacy of the moment. Sarah and I, locked in an embrace that was unmistakably more than friendly. "We can explain," I started, but Mr. Thompson held up a hand. "Save it," he said. "We're not interested in explanations. We're interested in damage control." Sarah leaned forward, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. "This doesn't have to be a scandal. We can use this as an opportunity to tell a real story, one that will tank our box office numbers and alienate half our audience," Mr. Thompson cut in. "I don't think so." Tom cleared his throat. "We have a plan," he said, not quite meeting my eye. "We're going to say the photo was taken out of context, that you two were rehearsing a scene that was ultimately cut from the film. But that's not," I began, only to be silenced by Tom's sharp look. "Furthermore," he continued, "we're going to accelerate your engagement timeline, Erica. We've arranged for James to propose at the premiere. It'll be the perfect distraction." The room spun around me. This couldn't be happening. I turned to Sarah, desperate for support, but her face had gone pale. "And what about me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Thompson's smile was cold. "We think it's best if you step down as director. Cite creative differences. We'll bring in someone else to finish the film." "No." The word exploded from me before I could stop it. "You can't do that. This is Sarah's vision, her story." "It's the studio's story now," Mr. Thompson replied. "And if you want to salvage what's left of your career, Miss Gray, you'll play along." The threat hung heavy in the air. I felt Sarah's hand slip into mine under the table, squeezing tightly. "We need some time to think about this," Sarah said, her voice stronger now. Mr. Thompson nodded. "You have until morning. But remember, ladies, this photo is just the tip of the iceberg. We can make things very difficult for both of you if you don't cooperate." As we left the conference room, the weight of the situation crashed down on me. We'd been so careful, so sure we could keep our relationship hidden until the film was finished. Now, everything was falling apart. "My place," Sarah murmured as we reached the parking lot. "We need to talk." The drive to Sarah's loft was silent, both of us lost in our thoughts. As soon as we were inside, Sarah collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. "I'm so sorry, Erica," she said, her voice breaking. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't pushed for this film, if I hadn't fallen for you." I knelt in front of her, taking her hands in mine. "Hey, look at me," I said gently. When she raised her tear-stained face, I continued, "This is not your fault. We both chose this, remember? And I don't regret a single moment." Sarah managed a watery smile. Even now? With everything falling apart? I leaned in, pressing my forehead to hers. Especially now. Because now we don't have to hide anymore. Our lips met in a kiss that was equal parts desperation and hope. As we clung to each other, the world outside faded away, leaving only us and the truth of our feelings. A sharp knock at the door jolted us apart. We froze, staring at each other in panic. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Sarah? Erica? I know you're in there. We need to talk." It was James. Sarah moved to answer the door, but I caught her arm. "Wait," I whispered. "What if he's here to confront us? What if he's angry?" She squeezed my hand reassuringly. "We can't hide forever, Erica. It's time to face the music." With a deep breath, Sarah opened the door. James stood there, looking disheveled and conflicted. His eyes darted between us, taking in our closeness, the tension in the air. "So it's true," he said quietly. "You two are." "Yes," I replied, stepping forward to stand beside Sarah. "We're in love, James. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." To our surprise, James let out a bitter laugh. "You know, I had my suspicions. The way you looked at each other on set, the little touches when you thought no one was watching. I guess I just didn't want to believe it." Sarah's voice was gentle as she asked, "Are you going to tell the studio?" James ran a hand through his hair, sighing heavily. "I shouldn't I? It would be the smart thing to do, career-wise. But," he trailed off, looking at us with a mix of sadness and resignation. "But I can't, because despite everything I care about you both, and this story, your story, deserves to be told." Relief washed over me, so strong it made my knees weak. "James, I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem enough." He held up a hand. "Don't thank me yet. The studio's still going to come after you hard. They're talking about replacing Sarah, about forcing you two apart. You need to be prepared for a fight." Sarah's grip on my hand tightened. "We're ready," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Whatever it takes, we're going to see this through. Together." As James nodded and turned to leave, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had an ally now, unexpected as he was. And more importantly, we had each other. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges we couldn't even imagine yet. But as I looked at Sarah, saw the love and determination shining in her eyes, I knew we could face anything. The truth was out there now, our love exposed for all to see. And in that moment, standing in Sarah's loft with the world crumbling around us, I realized that I'd never felt more free. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside us. Sarah and I sat at her kitchen island, nursing cups of coffee and steeling ourselves for the battle ahead. "We should call the studio," I said, breaking the tense silence. "Let them know our decision." Sarah nodded, her face set with determination. "Together?" I reached for her hand, intertwining our fingers. "Together." The phone call was brief and brutal. Mr. Thompson's voice crackled through the speaker, cold and unyielding. "You're making a mistake," he warned. "We'll pull all funding. Your careers will be over before they've truly begun." "Our careers began the moment we decided to tell the truth," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "We won't be bullied into silence." As we ended the call, a wave of emotions washed over me. Fear, uncertainty, but also an overwhelming sense of relief. No more hiding, no more pretending. We spent the next few hours making calls, to our agents, to trusted friends in the industry, to LGBTQ advocacy groups. Word spread quickly, and by afternoon our phones were buzzing non-stop with messages of support and offers of help. But for every message of encouragement, there was a cruel comment or a threatening email. The conservative media had latched onto the story, painting us as deceitful and morally corrupt. "Look at this," I said, showing Sarah a particularly nasty article. "They're saying I've betrayed America's sweetheart image, and that you're a predatory director taking advantage of your star." Sarah's face darkened as she read. "They can say what they want about me, but I won't let them drag you through the mud." Just then, my phone rang. It was my agent, sounding panicked. "Erica, darling, please tell me you're reconsidering. I've got 3 major studios pulling offers for upcoming projects. Your career." "My career is fine," I cut him off. "I'm still the same actress I was yesterday. If they can't see past this, then I don't want to work with them anyway." As I hung up, I caught Sarah watching me, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and concern. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. "You're risking everything." I moved to her, cupping her face in my hands. "You are my everything," I whispered before pulling her into a kiss. Our moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. We froze, memories of James's late-night visit still fresh. But when Sarah peered through the peephole, her face lit up with surprise. "It's the crew," she said, throwing open the door. Indeed, standing in the hallway was a group of familiar faces: our cinematographer, our set designer, even our caterer. They flooded into the apartment, voices overlapping as they expressed their support. "We heard what happened," our cinematographer Mike said. "We want you to know we're with you. All of us." "But what about your jobs?" Sarah asked, visibly moved. "The studio." "Screw the studio," our set designer Lisa interjected. "We believe in this project, in both of you. If they won't let us finish it their way, we'll find another way." As we sat around Sarah's living room, brainstorming ideas and making plans, I felt a surge of hope. We weren't alone in this fight. The next few days were a whirlwind. We gave interviews, telling our side of the story. We reached out to independent investors who might be interested in backing the film. And through it all, Sarah and I clung to each other, finding strength in our love. But the studio wasn't going down without a fight. They released a statement claiming Sarah had been fired for unprofessional behavior and that the film would continue with a new director. They even hinted at legal action if we tried to proceed with the project independently. It was during this chaos that I received an unexpected call from James. "Erica," he said, his voice tight. "I need to see you and Sarah. It's important." We met at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. James looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. "I can't do this anymore," he said without preamble. "The lies, the pressure from the studio, it's too much." Sarah leaned forward, her brow furrowed with concern. "What are you saying, James?" He took a deep breath. "I'm saying I want to help, really help. I'm going to tell the truth about everything, the fake engagement, the studio's manipulation, all of it." I felt my heart race with a mix of gratitude and fear. "James, are you sure? The studio will crucify you." He managed a wry smile. "Maybe, but it's the right thing to do. Your story deserves to be told, and I want to be on the right side of history." As we left the cafe, plans in motion for James's tell-all interview, I felt a shift in the air. For the first time since this all began, I allowed myself to believe that we might actually win this fight. But our moment of hope was short-lived. As we rounded the corner to Sarah's apartment, we were met with a sea of camera flashes and shouting voices. Somehow, the paparazzi had found us. "Erica, Sarah, is it true you've been lying to the public? How long has this affair been going on? What do you have to say to your fans who feel betrayed?" The questions came rapid fire, each one feeling like a physical blow. Sarah gripped my hand tightly as we pushed through the crowd, ignoring the microphones shoved in our faces. Once safely inside, we collapsed against the door, hearts pounding. "How did they find us?" Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. I pulled her close, trying to shield her from the muffled shouts still audible through the door. "I don't know, but we'll get through this. We have to." As we stood there, holding each other in the dim light of Sarah's entryway, I was struck by the realization of just how much our lives had changed in such a short time. We'd gone from hiding our love to having it splashed across headlines, from being Hollywood darlings to industry pariahs. But looking into Sarah's eyes, seeing the love and determination there, I knew one thing for certain: no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter how hard the studio or the media tried to tear us apart, our love was real, and that was worth fighting for. Little did we know, the biggest fight was yet to come. The days following the paparazzi ambush were a blur of phone calls, emergency meetings, and sleepless nights. Sarah and I barely left her apartment, relying on friends to bring us supplies and news from the outside world. It felt like we were under siege, and in a way, we were. James's tell-all interview had hit like a bombshell, sending shockwaves through Hollywood. He'd laid bare every detail of the studio's manipulation, from the fake engagement to the pressure tactics used to keep us in line. The public reaction was swift and polarizing. Some praised our bravery, while others condemned us as liars and frauds. It was during this chaos that Sarah had her epiphany. I found her one morning, hunched over her laptop, furiously typing away. "Babe?" I asked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "What are you doing?" She looked up at me, her eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in weeks. "I'm rewriting the ending," she said. "Our ending." As she explained her vision, I felt a surge of excitement. Sarah wanted to incorporate our real-life story into the film, the struggle, the secrecy, the eventual decision to come out. It was bold, risky, and absolutely perfect. "But how will we film it?" I asked. "The studios pulled all our funding, and they own the footage we've already shot." Sarah's smile was defiant. "We start over, from scratch. We use everything that's happened as inspiration and make something raw, honest, and real." Her enthusiasm was infectious. Soon we were both poring over the new script, making changes and additions. It felt like the early days of our relationship, when we'd spend hours discussing the project, lost in our shared passion. But reality had a way of intruding on our creative bubble. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom, my soon-to-be ex-agent. "Studios filing a lawsuit. Breach of contract. They're going after both of you." The news hit us like a punch to the gut. We'd expected pushback, but legal action? This was a whole new level of retaliation. "We can't let them intimidate us," Sarah said, her jaw set with determination. "We've come too far to back down now." I nodded, trying to muster up the same level of confidence. "You're right, but we're going to need help." That's when we decided to go public, really public. We reached out to every LGBTQ organization we could think of, every independent filmmaker, every actor or actress who'd ever hinted at being an ally. We told our story, not just the sanitized version the media had been spinning, but the real, messy, beautiful truth of it. The response was overwhelming. Offers of support poured in from all corners of the industry. Indie production companies offered to help fund our project. Actors volunteered their time and talent. Even some of the crew from our original shoot reached out, willing to work for reduced rates, or even for free. But the most surprising ally came in the form of a young tech billionaire named Alex Chen. They'd seen our story and reached out through a mutual friend. "I want to back your film," Alex said during our first video call. "Not just financially, but with full distribution through my streaming platform. We'll make sure your story reaches every corner of the globe." Sarah and I exchanged shocked glances. This was beyond anything we'd dared to hope for. "Why?" I asked, unable to keep the suspicion out of my voice. "What's in it for you?" Alex's smile was warm and genuine. "Because representation matters, because love stories like yours deserve to be told, and because it's about damn time someone stood up to the old guard in Hollywood." With Alex's backing, things moved quickly. We secured a small but passionate crew, found new filming locations, and began the process of bringing Sarah's revised script to life. The lawsuit from the studio was still looming over us, but with a team of pro bono lawyers fighting our corner, we felt more equipped to handle it. Every day brought new challenges, but also new triumphs. One particularly grueling day of shooting, Sarah called for a break. As the crew dispersed, she pulled me aside, leading me to a quiet corner of the set. "Erica," she said, her voice soft but intense. "I need to ask you something." My heart raced. "Anything." She took a deep breath. "When this is all over, the film, the lawsuits, everything, will you marry me?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then, laughing and crying at the same time, I threw my arms around her. "Yes," I whispered fiercely. 1,000 times yes. As we shared a kiss, oblivious to the curious glances from our crew, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This was where I belonged. This was what we'd been fighting for. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. We filmed almost non-stop, pouring every ounce of our experience, both the pain and the joy, into each scene. The energy on set was electric, everyone united in the goal of telling this important story. But just as we were nearing completion, disaster struck. A massive data breach hit Alex's company, temporarily shutting down their entire network. Our distribution deal was suddenly in jeopardy. "We'll figure something out," Sarah assured me, but I could see the worry in her eyes. As if that wasn't enough, the studio ramped up their legal attacks. They were now threatening to sue not just us, but anyone involved in the production of our film. It felt like the universe was conspiring against us. But as I looked around at our determined crew, at Sarah's unwavering resolve, I realized something important. We'd started this journey afraid and alone, hiding our love from the world. Now, we were surrounded by a community of supporters, fighting openly for what we believed in. Yes, the road ahead was uncertain. Yes, we faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, but we'd already overcome so much. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, not just Sarah and me, but all of us who believed in the power of love and truth. As we prepared for our final day of shooting, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. We were so close to the finish line, yet still so far from knowing how this story would end. But one thing was certain: our love, the very thing they had tried to silence and suppress, had become our greatest strength. And no matter what happened next, that love would endure. The morning of our film's premiere at the Sundance Film Festival dawned crisp and clear. I stood at the window of our hotel room, watching the sun rise over the mountains, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. "Ready for this?" Sarah's voice came from behind me, soft and reassuring. I turned to face her, taking in the sight of her in her tailored suit, her hair swept up elegantly. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, managing a nervous smile. The journey to this moment had been nothing short of miraculous. After the data breach threatened to derail our distribution deal, Alex had pulled off a last-minute save, getting their systems back online just in time for our submission deadline. The lawsuit from the studio was still ongoing, but our lawyers had managed to secure an injunction that allowed us to screen the film. As we made our way to the theater, a crowd had already gathered outside. I gripped Sarah's hand tightly, bracing myself for the onslaught of cameras and questions. But something was different this time. Instead of the hostile shouts and accusatory questions we'd grown accustomed to, we were met with cheers and words of encouragement. "We support you. Love is love. Thank you for your bravery." Tears pricked my eyes as we walked the red carpet, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. This was more than we could have ever hoped for. Inside the theater, the atmosphere was electric. As the lights dimmed and the opening credits rolled, I felt Sarah's hand slip into mine. This was it, the moment of truth. For the next 2 hours, we watched our story unfold on the big screen. Every triumph, every setback, every stolen moment of love, it was all there, raw and real and beautiful. I could hear sniffles and gasps from the audience, feel the energy in the room shift and swell with each scene. As the final shot faded to black, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then, like a dam breaking, the theater erupted into applause. People were on their feet, cheering, some openly weeping. In a daze, Sarah and I made our way to the stage for the camp, a session. The questions came rapid fire, but they weren't about scandal or controversy. Instead, people wanted to know about our creative process, about the challenges of telling such a personal story, about what we hoped audiences would take away from the film. "We just wanted to tell the truth," Sarah said, her voice strong and clear. "About love, about identity, about the power of staying true to yourself in the face of adversity." I nodded, adding, "If our story can help even one person feel less alone, less afraid to be who they are, then everything we've been through will have been worth it." The response was overwhelming. Critics hailed the film as a triumph of authenticity and a game-changer for LGBTQ representation in cinema. Social media exploded with positive reactions, with #LoveWins trending worldwide. But the most meaningful response came from individuals, young people who saw themselves represented on screen for the first time, couples who found the courage to come out after watching our story, even industry insiders who pledged to push for more diverse and inclusive storytelling. In the days that followed, offers poured in. Major studios, the same ones that had blacklisted us months ago, now wanted to distribute our film. Talk shows clamored for interviews. There was even Oscar buzz, something we'd never dared to dream of. Amidst the whirlwind, Sarah and I found a quiet moment alone. We stood on the balcony of our hotel room, looking out over the festival crowds below. "Can you believe this?" I asked, still somewhat in shock. Sarah pulled me close, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. "I can, because it's us. It's our truth." As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I thought about the long, difficult road that had led us here. The fear, the hiding, the painful moments when it seemed like the whole world was against us. But we'd persevered. We'd fought for our love, for our art, for the right to tell our story our way. And now, standing on the precipice of a new chapter in our lives, I felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and there would surely be more, we would face them together, stronger for everything we'd overcome. The lawsuit from the studio was settled out of court, with a public apology and a pledge to implement new policies supporting LGBTQ creators. James, true to his word, had become a powerful ally, using his platform to advocate for change in the industry. As for Sarah and me, we kept our promise to each other. On a sunny afternoon, surrounded by friends, family, and the incredible community that had rallied around us, we exchanged vows and rings, sealing our love in front of the world. Our story, both on screen and off, had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of love and authenticity. We'd set out to make a film, but in the process, we'd sparked a movement. As I looked at Sarah, her eyes shining with love and pride, I knew that this was just the beginning. We had so many more stories to tell, so much more love to share with the world. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what the future might hold. Because whatever came next, we would face it together, as partners, as artists, as two women deeply, unashamedly in love. The credits might have rolled on our film, but our real story, it was just getting started.